and welcome to Telewizja Republika. New York Times dropped a true bomb. 200 sources, months of investigations, and there's the fact. A New York Times text about the cooperation between CIA and Ukrainian secret services. For over a decade, the United States and Ukraine have maintained a covert intelligence partnership aimed primarily at countering Russian influence in the region. This collaboration encompasses the establishment of a network of spy bases strategically positioned along the Russian border, a project partly financed and equipped by the Central Intelligence Agency. These clandestine bases play a crucial role in monitoring Russian troop movements and intercepting communications, providing valuable intelligence to both nations. Notably, Ukraine's military base, targeted by devastating Russian missile attacks, house an underground bunker funded by the C.I.A., serving as a clandestine center for intelligence operations. This partnership, which predates the current conflict, has endured across different U.S. presidential administrations, evolving over the time to transform Ukraine into a pivotal intelligence ally against Russian aggression. The CIA's engagement in Ukraine extends beyond infrastructure support, encompassing training programs for elite Ukrainian commando forces such as Unit 2245, with a focus on capturing and reverse engineering Russian drones and communications equipment. Furthermore, the CIA has facilitated the training of a new generation of Ukrainian operatives tasked with clandestine operations inside Russia and Europe during the 2022 Russian invasion. C.I.A. officers remained embedded within Ukrainian ranks, providing critical intelligence support to repel Russian offensives. The revelation of this intelligence partnership, previously shrouded in secrecy by the New York Times, underscores its significance in expanding Ukraine's role as key intelligence gathering hub. The Operation Goldfish, spearheaded by the CIA, represents a pivotal aspect of the intelligence partnership, focusing on espionage, tactics, and intelligence collection. This program involves the training of Ukrainian officers in espionage techniques, followed by deployment of those 12 strategically positioned border bases. These officers operated covertly and operated covert agent networks within Russia, leveraging CIA-provided equipment and training to gather intelligence. Despite the emphasis on intelligence gathering, the CIA maintained strict red lines, refusing to directly engage in offensive lethal operations, prioritizing intelligence collection to inform strategic decision-making. The partnership faced challenges and escalations, particularly concerning covert operations and unilateral actions by Ukrainian forces. General Kondratyuk of Ukraine's military intelligence sought CIA assistance for covert operations, encountering refusals and prompting independent actions. These unilateral initiatives, including a failed mission in Crimea, elicited retaliation from Russia, escalating tensions between the two nations and two partners. Despite the setbacks, the CIA program persisted, yielding valuable intelligence on Russian activities for United States. Tensions escalated further, resulting in General Kondratyk's dismissal and Ukrainian operatives restored to targeted assassinations, leveraging tactics learned from CIA training, intensifying the shadow war between Russia and Ukraine. The partnership's significance became even more pronounced during the 2022 Russian invasion. In March 2021, intelligence reports of Russian troop buildup near Ukraine prompted concerns of an imminent invasion. CIA and MI6 warnings in November 2021 alerted Ukraine to impending invasion plans, despite initial skepticism from President Zelensky and his administration. When the invasion commenced in February 2022, the CIA provided vital intelligence on Russian plans and facilitated targeted strikes. Ukrainian partisan networks, supported by CIA-trained operatives, disrupted Russian occupation efforts, culminating in the successful thwarting of a Russian convoy crossing in July 2022, highlighting effective collaboration between Ukraine and the United States. Despite political debates and concerns over U.S. commitment, the CIA remains steadfast in backing Ukrainian efforts, ensuring the continuity of the partnership in the face of Russian aggression. That's the takeaway of the article. The CIA's unwavering support reinforces the formidable alliance between the United States and Ukraine in countering Russian influence, bolstering Ukraine's defense capabilities and resilience. The establishment of secret bases for intelligence gathering and ongoing training initiatives underscored the enduring commitment to Ukraine's security and sovereignty. Despite challenges encountered along the way, the CIA's dedication solidifies its position as a reliable ally in safeguarding Ukraine against external threats. And what is probably the most important thing in the whole context of the things that we have found out of this article is that it is Ukrainian knowledge about Russia that was also benefiting United States and CIA's abilities to operate on the territory of Russia and gather information about the state which is effectively ruled right now by FSB Colonel Vladimir Putin, himself being a former KGB intelligence officer. This actually breaks the problems that intelligence agencies had for a long time to effectively penetrate former Soviet Union and Russia, which is a state that is operated right now generally by KGB people who are ruling the country right now. And it's important to know and understand also the meaning of the counterintelligence aspect, which here in this part of the world might be fundamental and pivotal. It's very hard to build secret services in the state in which most of the people who used to rule the secret services after the communism collapsed have memory of being a part of communism and communist secret services. And that's actually the problem of each and every state that used to belong to Warsaw Pact or was just a part of Soviet Union. You can leave us your email here on rakrakon.com. That's our website. We will come back to you with the reports about the information from the ongoing war against the West that we try to report on our program. My name is Michał Rachon. This is Rakrakon. And we roll in.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
And tonight, to talk about this tremendous piece of journalism and breaking news is one and only Douglas London, a retired decorated veteran of C.I.A.'s clandestine service who served extensively. Good to see you again, sir. Across the Middle East, Africa, and South and Central Asia, and was a CIA subject matter expert on Iran, counterterrorism, weapons of mass destruction. Mr. London is an adjunct professor, assistant professor at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, non-resident fellow of MEI Countering Terrorism and Extremism Program. In 2022, Douglas London published a book, The Recruiter, Spying and the Lost Art of American Intelligence. Great book. I read it. It's reading it. It's just like watching a spy movie. This is a book about the 34 years of career in CIA of case officer Douglas London. Welcome back to Rakrakon. Welcome to Telewizja Republika. Great to see you again.
It's great to be back with you and your audience. Thanks for having me.
Sir, it doesn't happen very often that we read the kind of texts that New York Times published a couple of days ago. And I would like to start with referring to the title of your book. You are writing that this is a lost art of spying. Looks like the art isn't lost, and actually is in pretty good shape if we look at this long years of cooperation of CIA with Ukrainian services on the old front of a new Cold War, as we could call it.
Well, it's certainly good to see the agency doing what it does so well and does best, which is spying. And the programs that the article refers to are longstanding expertise that the agency has provided to our partners in running insurgency operations, operating behind enemy lines, and collecting intelligence. And the Ukrainians have clearly used that training well.
Sir, the number one thing that interests me and most of our viewers, since our viewers are interested in the Russian hostile activity against the West, is the aspect of the thing that was a part of the history of CIA and of American intelligence agencies, which is a troublesome history because United States, despite winning the Cold War, had always trouble with handling and executing successful intelligence operations on the territory of Russia because of the language differences, because of the cultural differences, and primarily because Russia was and still in a way is a quasi-totalitarian, or in the times of communism, just a simple totalitarian regime. Looks like the cooperation between CIA and Ukrainian services is a key to actually do things that weren't possible before. Would you agree on that?
Well, it's a great partnership. I wouldn't discount what the CIA has been able to do over the years inside of Russia. I think they've been effective at recruiting and running agents, but you have to bear in mind that to do so safely means maintaining a very small footprint. Whereas the Ukrainians serve as a tremendous partner with language, expertise, and the ability to be a presence within Russia on a large scale. And I think by employing the tools that the CIA has helped provide them, they have done a great job for their own utility on intelligence, but also intelligence that they're providing to the United States and its other partners.
Okay, I do not want to get into the details of the overall scheme or more details that were revealed by New York Times, but there are some patterns that are obvious, and I would like to have your opinion on those patterns that show up in the article. Let's start with the bases itself. We are talking about 12 compounds, 12 bases. What do you make of those information about 12 points, 12 facilities that were, I don't know if operated, but for sure funded and supplied with the knowledge of CIA. What is the role of this kind of things in the intelligence operations of the kind that are described in the article?
When you're running operations behind enemy lines, you need to have forward bases that provide logistical support, also electronic collection support against what the enemy might be doing, and that could be coordinated to help you operate your teams or individuals who are collecting intelligence or conducting kinetic operations behind those lines. So I'm not in a position to comment on how many bases and where they might be. I think that was addressed in the article, but their use very much fits the pattern of these type of operations, which historically go back to World War II. And the whole concept is referred to as Jedburgh, which was the name of the program that the Office of Strategic Services used, and that's the CIA's predecessor, to work with French resistance, Polish resistance, and resistance forces across the world against the Germans.
So do I understand it properly that part of the actions that we've heard about, actually in the article is referred to directly, but there were many similar actions over the span of the last 2 years, even if we take into the consideration the fact that this cooperation lasted longer than the last 2 years of this Russian war against Ukraine. Can we refer them to in a way, intelligence operations or effects of partnership between intelligence agencies? We've seen, I don't know, things blowing up far away inside Russia, oil, fuel depots that caught fire rapidly out of blue air. Those are the activities that could be an effect of this kind of cooperation?
Well, these programs take time to mature, and they depend very much on personal relationships between, the partner forces, in this case, the Ukrainians and the Americans. And I think the fact that the program had a head start of some 10 years where people were able to establish these relationships, establish trust, the Ukrainians felt confident in the training they were being provided, and also confident in the equipment they were being offered, because a lot of the tradecraft principles in operating behind enemy lines, they don't change very much, but the equipment used to help advance those efforts, that does. And there has to be trust to do that. And I think what we see now, to some extent, is Ukraine helping to offset some of its challenges with supplies along the front line by trying to increasingly take the war home to Russia and bring a cost to the Russian people, because many of these operations we now see are targeting infrastructure, refineries, things that will impact Russians' day-to-day life, which might have an impact on the cohesion of the Russian population for Putin.
There are at least a couple of aspects of this article that are very important from the perspective of the states that used to be a part of Warsaw Pact or Soviet Union. My home country, Poland, was a part of Warsaw Pact. The Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, or Ukraine itself were part of the Soviet Union. But all of the states in this part of the world share the same problem. This is a problem of the institutional memory of the secret services operators and the services itself. And actually it looks, and that's my takeaway from the article, that this intelligence cooperation had to start with counterintelligence security, I would put it this way, because the whole thing started with the CIA chief traveling to Ukraine, and next day the pictures of those meetings were published by the Russian outlets, what made it quite clear at the beginning that the Ukrainian services at start weren't secure enough to do anything if this kind of pictures show up the next day. Your take on this?
Well, Russia had an advantage given longstanding relationships with Ukraine specifically, because up until the time of their attack and invasion in 2014, there were still Russian trainers and advisors from the Russian FSB, and particularly so in the SBU, which is the Ukrainian Civilian Intelligence Agency. So the partnership, to be effective, really needed a change in Ukrainian organizations. We saw the growth of a new military intelligence unit, which has matured over the years and was in fact the leading partner for the U.S. and other Western services. And we saw great reforms in the SBU, where the SBU, I think, had a rough start of it at the beginning of the conflict after Russia's 2014 invasion and then again in 2022. But we see the changes in the SBU where they've gotten rid of a lot of the old guard, established new units that are compartmented, so they kind of have firewalls from the old units where there still could be some Russian sympathizers or Russian agents. So to your point, counterintelligence had to be the first step in this partnership. And I think the United States and Ukraine did it very well. And again, we're seeing the success of it today.
The counterintelligence security of this cooperation was also and is in the article referred to in the context of creating brand new units within the Ukrainian secret services system, units consisting of people who, and it's a quote from the article, of people who do not even know what Soviet Union was. So it is a clear reference to the people with no memory whatsoever, not only regarding the secret services of the Soviet Union and Russia, but the Soviet Union itself. And on the other hand, one could refer to this, well, getting those new young guns to a craft which is related to a deep knowledge could be dangerous for the service itself, but looks like it was a condition of establishing this kind of cooperation.
I think it certainly was. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, even in my own memory, where Ukraine was a somewhat hostile intelligence territory for the United States, because the Ukrainians of the old generation were still somewhat sympathetic towards the Russians and distrustful of the United States. But you see these people who are now in command positions today. You see the military intelligence chief Budanov, who started off essentially as a commando when this program was begun and has risen to be in the leadership of the HUR, and they come with a completely different perspective. They do not see the Russians as friends at all. They see the Russians as very much their enemy, because their entire life has been spent fighting off Russian aggression. So I think the CIA's insistence and that of other partner services that Ukraine had to sort of start all over again and rebuild from the ground up has paid benefits, and it takes time. But now again, with 10 years having evolved, we see how that foundation has become very strong, and the current generation of leadership and operators within Ukraine Special Services have become very effective and extremely reliable.
We've been taught here, and we've been told here in this part of the world, in Central Europe, in Eastern Europe, that the knowledge of the old regime secret services about the Middle East, about Afghanistan, about Iraq, was something instrumental and fundamental for the first years of cooperation between American services and post-communist services, and I'm referring to the history of Poland. But it looks like the number one priority and the really important knowledge from the standpoint of American services is the knowledge about Soviet Union or post-Soviet Union institutions, and surely FSB as a kind of institutional follow-up of KGB is this kind of knowledge. So, what is your assessment of this aspect of the whole debate, of the whole actually thing that we can refer to based on this text?
Well, the security services across the former Warsaw Bloc that transitioned and became liberal democracies and joined NATO, their services had to change culturally and mechanically because they were now operating in free and democratic societies, whereas the FSB is essentially a continuation of the KGB. Their tradecraft is very much the same, their principles are very much the same, and their leadership, if you look at some of these older gentlemen who are running the organization, again, their principles and their leadership is very much the same. So the CIA had that expertise and knowledge, which we never forgot in terms of working against both the Soviet Union and then as it transitioned into the Russian Federation. And I think that historic knowledge, that corporate memory has been useful, but I wouldn't discount at all what the former Warsaw Pact nations, such as your own country, Poland, brought. There's tremendous cultural and historic understanding in Poland and the Czech Republic and these countries that even the United States didn't have. And I think the sharing of that knowledge and the cooperation over the years since those countries transitioned has only made the Western alliance so much stronger.
We do know now, at least after this article, and that's my opinion, we can understand better at least some of the operations that we witnessed and that we ask ourselves the question, how could it happen? And there's another very interesting aspect. We know that the conditions of support of the United States, the support of United States to Ukraine during this war came under several conditions. And those conditions referred to lack of acceptance of US, of actions far beyond the borders of Ukraine and the territories that legally belong to Ukraine. And yet, we've seen this kind of operations. We've seen booby traps planted on the helicopter bases. We've seen obvious actions behind the Russian borders on the Russian territory. And from the text, it's quite clear that Ukraine did that adopting knowledge received from the Western allies, but without their consent and without even informing them about those operations. Why?
It's a very gray line. I think politically for the United States and strategically, there is concern not to trigger a response from Putin that he feels the United States is now directly attacking him within his own borders. So consider the training that the Ukrainians have been provided. They've been trained in how to operate behind enemy lines. The idea being they were going to be operating in their own territory, but territory that was occupied by Russia. The tradecraft for them to operate in Crimea is no different than the tradecraft for them to operate in Moscow, if you think about it. Whereas the United States then can very legitimately say, well, we didn't provide active intelligence support, targeting support, or consent for them to undertake operations inside of Russia. They're using the same tradecraft, probably not the same equipment, because I'm pretty confident we would draw a line about that so that there would be no tail that could be seen. But certainly the tradecraft and the training, the principles, how they collect intelligence, how they case a target, how they execute, and then how they exfil their teams would be the same whether the training was for them to use in Crimea or to use in St. Petersburg or Moscow.
At least two other aspects are very interesting for me from the standpoint of your knowledge, your expertise. In this text, we've seen actually parts of text and words said by people who witnessed those kind of things. The computer maps with online dots showing drones operating over territory of Russia from those bases. And again, it's a kind of answer to the questions that we can ask ourselves. For example, questions of drones that were noticed over Kremlin, drones that were operating over Moscow, drones that were traveling through and actually penetrating the Russian air defense systems. Looks like this was also a part of applying of the knowledge built by Ukraine with the support of its allies.
I think it's a good example, Rock, because they're using the knowledge that was provided by the CIA and other Western services, but they were using their own equipment. Ukraine has done an exceptionally good job about replicating and developing and innovating their own commercial equipment. So they could use the principles that were taught to them on how to use drones and that kind of surveillance for casing targets, for developing a target package, and then for coordinating attack without necessarily using the equipment that the United States or other partners provided that was meant to be used not inside of Russia, but rather in occupied Ukrainian territory.
It looks like we do have a whole new knowledge about the way that wars are waged. And we know, based on this text, that both Black Sea Fleet and North Fleet of Russia were interests of United States, and that Ukraine could provide some very interesting knowledge from the position of US. In one part of the text, we even read that the amount of information about those assets of Russia were so big that it was very hard to analyze it by one of the biggest military intelligence communities, the intelligence communities of the world, which is C.I.A. and generally the American intelligence community. What does it mean if we're talking about such a great number of information, such a big volume of documents, of texts? What do you make of it? Why Ukraine decided to share such a big amount of data?
I think, looking at it from, standing back and understanding the motives here, the article definitely had the intent of showing Ukraine's an important partner for the United States. And I think it is in an effort to appeal to the American people who are uncertain as to how far the United States should go in supporting Ukraine, that this is not charity, that the United States is getting a very significant benefit against a very large and common threat, which is Russia and Vladimir Putin. So I can't really speak to how much intelligence, but I could certainly appreciate the fact that the Ukrainians certainly were able to provide a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of insights that certainly enhanced the United States' ability to protect its own national security interests. And I think it's a good story to be released with understanding a little concern over how much tradecraft is exposed, that Americans, when they're thinking about their elected politicians who might vote for or against packages of support to Ukraine, see this isn't about, just helping a friend. This is also about helping ourselves, because the threat from Putin is very real and very near, I believe, for the United States as well as it is for our European and Western partners.
So as far as I understand it, if there was a kind of leak, and we know that the authors claim that they talked to over 200 sources, but if there is a kind of leak, it could be understood as a way to convince the American public opinion that they spent their money, their taxpayers' dollars on a certain cause, which brings certain effects that were shared in that way with the public opinion?
I would certainly expect that would be a goal or an incentive on the part of the Ukrainians. And from looking at the article, without speaking to veracity, because I have my own limitations with the CIA, I think this is largely from the Ukrainian side, but very consistent with my understanding and any CIA officer's understanding of what this program would look like. And the political benefits of letting the American public know that this program, this cooperation, what the Ukrainians are doing is very much in American interest, I think is an important point to make.
Okay, my final question, in a way, it could be the most important takeaway from this article. If we're trying to answer the question, what was the reason for which Ukraine managed to save itself in the first days, first weeks and first months of this Russian aggression is more understandable after reading of this text, because based on what was written in the article, the reason and the major mistake that the Russian intelligence agency made was underestimating or actually lacking of knowledge that in reality CIA and other MI6, two most famous intelligence agencies in the world, were actually helping Ukraine to protect itself against the upcoming aggression. And that makes it easy to understand why those two states, Great Britain and the United States, also my home country, Poland, were among the first that ring the bell that the invasion is imminent, that it is going to happen, and that we are going to have a war, despite the fact that many intelligence agencies and many states didn't even believe it.
I think Russia certainly understood that CIA cooperation was being provided to Ukraine, as well as MI6. I don't think they appreciated the insights that CIA had on Russia's own campaign to wage the war. It was very specific intelligence that even CIA Director Burns has acknowledged that allowed Ukrainians to be at the right places at the right time to meet Russian special operations forces who had intended to seize the capital, kill Zelensky, and basically declare victory within a matter of hours, at least a couple of days. But the United States had the game plan and shared it with the Ukrainians. So even though outgunned and outmanned, Ukraine was able to marshal its defenses very smartly and very effectively against a very poorly coordinated Russian attack.
Thank you very much for your time, your expertise. One more time for all the viewers who are interested in Douglas London's book. That's the way that the book looks like. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it in all versions. I read it. I have my copy, but it's also available as an audiobook. So if you prefer to listen to it while driving, for example, it's a great way to do it. Really interesting story and spy novel in a way, but based on a reality of a man that our viewers know, Mr. Douglas London. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, this show comes back tomorrow, so stay safe and stay with Telewizja Republika. That's our Substack. You can find it on rackrakon.com, and you can leave us your email. We will come back to you with the reports from the front lines of the war against the West that we report daily on Telewizja Republika. Stay safe. Ciao, ciao. Bye.